Hi, my name is Chad Williams, and today we're going to talk about short and long data format. First, I'm going to just load the data that we created in another video. I'm going to do that as short data equals read.csv sample underscore data, which is what I called it. Then I'm going to do row.names equals 1. So if we run that, what we're going to get is the data that we created, and we see that here. We have 3 different columns, and then we have 10 different data points per column. I'm going to quickly rename those columns, and basically right now I need to decide what my actual data is going to represent. Now we created this data, it's fake, but what are we going to talk about throughout these videos? Let's talk about different teaching styles in university. So we have 3 different styles in the paradigm I'm going to describe here. One is the lecturer style, and then another is a flipped classroom. Then we'll just say applied for the last one. So the first one, professor lectures, students learn, they do exams. The second one, the professor lectures half the time, and then you work on material the other half the time. Applied, we'll just say applied is when you're just working through material the whole time. There might be some lectures or some tutorials, but they're more out of class time, like these videos, for example. So if I do that, what I get is 3 different columns. So what I have is 10 data points per condition. So this is what we call short format. Short format data is when you have a column for each condition. So we see this in different programs like Excel or even SPSS. However, R doesn't really use short format for the majority of things that we're going to be talking about in these videos. So what we need to do is we need to change this into long format. So to turn it into long format, we could do it manually, but why bother? We're going to instead use a package called Reshape2. So let's load that package. Of course, if you don't have it already, you're going to have to install it first, but I have it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use the melt function. So I'm going to go long underscore data, and I'm going to say equals melt, and that's the function from the Reshape2 package. And what we're going to do is we're just going to put short data, so our other variable that we created when we loaded the data, into this. I'm going to run it. What we see is we go from short data where we have 10 observations with 3 columns to 30 observations with 2 columns. So what happened? This is long format here. What we see on the right is the same values that we had in each column, but now instead of next to each other, they're just toppled on top of each other. And on the left, what we have is our condition names. So we're just using these as identifiers for what the variable is within. So what we know is this 2.19, so forth, is in the flipped classroom condition. So that's simply what the difference is. Where short format, you're just lining them up next to each other. Long format, what we're doing is we're just stacking it on top of each other and then giving each of these values an identifier. Now, long format's really important because it helps us organize our data in a better way. And right now, with just one variable, that might not be too obvious. But if we add another variable, it's going to be very important because if we have another variable, so this is variable 1 where we're talking about different teaching styles, but our other variable could be something else like what time of the day it is. So maybe lecturing works better later in the day than early in the day, or flipped is better early or late, or whatnot. So what we can do is we can actually better organize our data with long format, especially when we have more than one variable. So let's look at what that might look like. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new column to this short data. So we're going to add a new variable called time. What we're going to do is the first 5 data points are going to be early, so early in the day, and the second 5 data points are going to be late in the day. So I'm going to see, so concatenate, I want early 5 times, so I'm going to use the rep function, which just means repeat. So I'm going to say I want to repeat early 5 times, and then concatenate that with repeat late 5 times. And what we get is this new time variable, which says early, 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 late, 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 late. And then I'm going to bind this to our short data, and what I mean by that is I'm going to add it into the column. So we can do that with cbind. So short underscore data equals cbind. So we're binding columns. And then we're going to say short data comma, time. So if we do this, we're going to replace the short data variable with itself and a new variable of time. So early, 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 late, late, late. So what we see here is now we have our lecture flipped and applied, but then we also have the other factor of early and late. So you could already see this coding style is similar to our long data format where we're just listing the IDs of each of these numbers or our values. So we're going to remelt this, and what we're going to see is something a little different. So it's using time as an ID variable. Now, it does this automatically because it knows that time is what we call a factor, because it's not numbers. So it knows it's not values, it's a factor. And so it's going to automatically distinguish that that is one of our factors. But we can also do this manually. So we could say ID equals time. If we do that, we're not going to get that message, but we're going to get the same result. So if we look at that now, what we have is we have lecture style early for this one data point. Lecture style early for the second data point. You see it goes through the 10 different lecture data points, but then it scans through the first 5 is early and the second 5 is late, and so forth. So now we're starting to see why there's more use in having this long format, because we can really help distinguish these data points by all of their factors in a very intuitive way. So we know this one, for example, was in the applied teaching style late in the day. That pretty much wraps up what short and long data format is, and there's more to it, and there's more to this melt function as well, but I'll leave that there, and so you can explore that more on your own, or else if it's important, I can add another video in the future.